Welcome back to Running Strong. My name is Will Frantz, and if you enjoy this podcast, I'd really appreciate you hitting subscribe or follow or whatever button tells your podcast platform that you want to hear more of it. It really does help more people to find it, so I'm not just shouting into the void. And if you've already done that, thank you. And my request to you would be to share it with someone who you think might enjoy it, a friend who might benefit from the information, or who just wants to hear about hiking the Grand Canyon. Because that's where I'm going to start off today. That's what I did a couple weeks ago, and it was sweet. So first off, it is lovely. I highly recommend it if you're one of the people like me who is interested in the desert. It is the desert. If you don't like the desert, then you're probably not going to dig the Grand Canyon too much. It's certainly not full of trees, but it is really cool. And you can see like 2 billion year old layers of rocks. Like, it just puts a lot of perspective on you and the planet. And I enjoy national parks and places outside that remind me that I don't matter, be it the Grand Canyon or the redwoods or any of these things, or just like trees that have been older or alive around longer than most civilizations are just a thing that I think puts a good life perspective for me and my brain. So Grand Canyon definitely fits into that bucket because it's unreal that a river can do that. It's unbelievable. It is a mile-deep canyon in the middle of the desert, carved apart by water. And it's beautiful. It's also really difficult. It's hot. There's a lot of climbing. You should probably carry more water than you think, but it truly was an amazing experience. And the way I got into this is a friend and former client sent me a message a few months ago, and they had done pretty much all of the logistics because they were going to do this trip anyway. And they were looking for a partner with whom to do it. And I had been thinking about doing some kind of rim to rim in the next year or two. So the timing was just really perfect. Flew into Phoenix, road tripped up a car to the North Rim, which farther than you might expect if you just don't think about it. Then we drove down to the North Rim, parked a car there, spent the night. We actually ran into Jeff Browning at the bar where we were eating dinner, coincidentally enough, and he had just done rim to rim to rim, so started on the south and ended it back on the south, and did it about as fast as we were going to do a single rim to rim, because of course he did. He's Jeff Browning, and we were choosing to hike it. And he gave us some lovely advice and was the lovely human that he is. Anyway, on day of, woke up incredibly early, caught the shuttle to the South Kaibab Trail, took that instead of Bright Angel. I know the bridge for Bright Angel to cross the river is closed. I'm not sure if the trail itself is actually closed. Again, I didn't do a lot of the logistics. But South Kaibab tends to be prettier anyway, from everybody I know that has done it. It is a little more difficult. It's a little shorter but steeper. So if you're gonna go down and your knees can handle it, it tends to be a prettier view. Bright Angel is a little more enclosed, so you have this like sense of grandeur with giant walls around you, but it's not as exposed. You don't see as much. So if I were to do this again, which I'm thinking about, to do like a rim to rim to rim, I would go down South Kaibab and then I would go back up Bright Angel, but to each their own. Anyway, we hiked / kind of trotted down. The jogging down was a little easier than the walking because it's just so steep, and letting gravity help was useful. And you make it to this bridge, you cross this big suspension bridge across Colorado, and then you finally make it to Phantom Ranch, which is a waypoint. You see mules, you can fill water, etc. And then this started the mostly flat portion of the trek. Like I say mostly because there is an uphill grade pretty much from there until you hit the end, but it's barely uphill. You gain, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000 feet over the course of 7 or 8 miles or whatever. And it's very runnable if you were there to run it. And we kept it pretty chill. We passed Ribbon Falls. You can see it from the trail. We didn't make the trek over, largely because we just didn't feel like being wet. The bridge has been removed. I'm not certain if they're replacing it. I've heard different things from different people, and I honestly don't remember what I read on the Park Service website because I did so much reading and ended up just spiraling out about water access. So you can see Ribbon Falls from the trail. It probably is worth a trek if you're interested. But at the moment, you have to ford the river and just didn't really feel like being that wet for another 10 miles. And which is probably a good call, at least for me, because the hardest part ended up being blisters and my messed up feet. So making that worse would have been unpleasant. Learned some things about my sock choices and how they interact with my feet for 6 straight miles of a 15 to 20% downhill. This is one of these things about longer efforts. You can do all the testing in the world. It's not like this is the first time I've worn these socks. It's not the first time I've worn them on an aggressive downhill. It's the first time I've worn them for 6 straight miles of an aggressive downhill, though. And it turns out that they're not particularly friendly to my heels. Anyway, we ultimately made it to Cottonwood Campground, and this is where you really start to trek up. First few miles aren't that bad, other than being really exposed. It was hot. It started at 40 degrees from the south rim, and it wasn't that bad. And then it peaked at somewhere probably over 95 in the bottom of the canyon. You're going to get big temperature swings in the canyon. People that do this will sometimes say it's really nice to hike in February, March, because you'll have ice at the top. It'll be 60 or 70 at the bottom. Yeah, again, desert's weird. Anyway, hiking up, it was beautiful. This is the cool thing about going through the whole thing. The North Rim is just different. I don't know. It does get more tree. There is more it's just more grandiose, I guess. And then the last 2.5 miles are where it gets pretty brutal. It's a good 15+% grade most of the way up with some pretty old steps, and it's just a trek. You also start running across people going the other direction, and for over a mile, people kept telling us that we had 2 miles left. The last person was probably the closest. But yeah, when you keep hearing that you got 2 miles left for over a mile when your feet are not stoked, it wasn't the best. Another big piece of advice I have for this is water. And then 2, make sure you check your water stations, any of that. And then 2, poles. Poles are super helpful. Yeah, I would bring them every time. Unless you're incredibly tall, then you might be able to get over the steps really well. But for me, poles were very helpful. Anyway, didn't end up all that worse for wear, except for some sunburned lips and my feet. And it was a great time. I would do it again. I'm thinking about doing it again. I probably wasn't thinking about doing it again 2 miles short from the top rim on the north, but I think that can probably be fixed with some better foot choices. So I would recommend it if this is the kind of thing you're interested in doing. And one thing that I was really pondering while moving through the canyon was, I don't know, I guess an idea of success. I sent an email about this a little bit, but we're going to vamp on it a little more here. I was having this thought when it sucked. I started thinking about races and people who bow out at certain aid stations. And it's a thing about doing something like the Grand Canyon or the Teton Crest Trail, which is also on my list, that there really isn't an out, right? Short of hitting the SOS button on my InReach and trying to get a helicopter rescue, once you're down there, you're down there. and you just have to keep going and finish the thing. Which is why there are an incredible number of signs in and around the canyon warning you how difficult it is and how many people suffer from heat stroke every year. Pictures of, well, like stick figure pictures of people heaving over and vomiting with the sun bearing upon them, and Park Service employees lying to you about the temperature at 7 a.m. Some guy told us it was going to be like 90 at 7 a.m. It was 70, to be fair. I get it. People make bad choices. We saw some people who made bad choices. But all of that got to me thinking about success and shared qualities of people who achieve their goals. And to be fair, there are a lot of shared qualities of successful people, from like dedication and grit to preparation and talent to just like luck and social support. But one thing that we often undervalue is desire. Like, do you even want to do the thing in the first place? Because if the answer is no, then it's a lot less likely that you're going to be successful. And I see this a lot when it comes to training or exercise, whatever we want to call it. Someone decides to run a marathon or 100-miler because their friend told them it would be a good idea, or they read some book about some person who ran 100 miles, and then they immediately sign up for their first ultra, and they overlook the fact that that person may or may not have run 20 or 30 of those 100 miles with broken feet. And while all of that's fine, it often leads them to pursuing a goal that never really mattered to them in the first place. So they don't really train. They phone in a lot of it, and as a result, they don't hit the goal. Or they do, like, keep training, and they try to push through hard, but they have to convince themselves to get out on every session, and they just wonder why it's such a struggle. They wonder why they're procrastinating getting themselves out the door. Then they start to blame themselves and get down on themselves for a lack of discipline or being lazy or whatever else. And the big thing oftentimes is that they just didn't really want the end goal in the first place. Like, running an ultramarathon wasn't important. Running a marathon wasn't important. Losing 20 pounds didn't really matter to them. And as a result, they're finding training or exercise or whatever to be a big struggle. And I throw the last one in there because it's one of the primary reasons I don't talk or do a lot about fat loss, even though it's very obviously profitable in the fitness industry, is because I don't think it matters. And a lot of the time we work with people over a relatively small amount of weight. They don't truly think it matters either, so it just ends up being this big chore. So back to running. Set a big goal about running or whatever, and they don't actually care about running, right? Like, I think we often have these romantic notions of the past in trail running or marathoning or whatever. And one of the things that we overlook that is kind of a romantic notion to me is that when it comes to ultras, like, people just loved running so much, they wanted to keep doing more of it. They'd been running for years. They'd run roads, they'd run trails, they'd run 5Ks and 10Ks and marathons and whatever. And they just loved it so much they wanted to keep going farther. They wanted to see what they could do. And now, a lot of the time, and this is the same is true for like marathons, like, people often start with a 5K or a 10K or whatever, and then they just kept wanting to go farther and see what they could do and put in more miles every week. And now people will start with a marathon. It will be their first race. It will be the first thing they train for. People will start with a 50-miler. Hell, I did. I wish I had done that differently. And we just don't actually care about the activity or the end goal, and that's why it is such a struggle. If we pursue things that we actually want, then we tend to stick with them a lot longer. And if we start lower, like if you start with wanting to do pretty well in a 5K, you can probably do that. And you're gonna get a lot of wins in the process, and you might actually end up enjoying it more than having to end up running like 40 to 50 mile weeks solely to make sure that your body doesn't break in marathon training. It doesn't mean, like, if we pursue goals that we want to do, then we tend to want to do them. And it doesn't mean that every aspect of training is going to be your favorite thing. I have a lot of runners I coach who don't really like lifting. But when they do the lifting thing, when they take the lifting thing seriously, they get to do the running thing. When they don't do the lifting thing, they get injured, right? So they do the lifting, they make it through, they push with it in order to do the running better or in order to do the running safer. I like climbing. I truly hate doing direct bicep training. I find it unpleasant. I actually don't understand like bicep curls and how it's such a big deal. Like, I realize that there's a like show me your bicep everything, right, that I grew up with, that we all grew up with probably. But I just find it unpleasant. I'm not a huge fan of that sensation. It feels bad to me. Yet when I don't do a regular bit of direct bicep training, I tend to end up with elbow tendon problems. And may or may not be dealing with that right now. And as a result, I need to just do that every week, right? Like, I need to do some curls, and it doesn't need to be that many. And it just, not everything has to be your favorite aspect of training, but if we actually work towards things we want to do, then we will tend to succeed a lot more, because overall, like, the overarching thing that we're trying to achieve will actually be motivating to us. Like, I just think that life is short. I've probably said this a lot, and there are a lot of things to do. And I don't understand the notion of, or the idea, or the pursuit of things that you don't really give a shit about. Find something that inspires you. Find something that, or at least that's what I try to do. I try to find goals or find targets that actually speak to me. And I try to train in a way that I truly enjoy. Like, I've had multiple people ask me about what I did to train for the Grand Canyon. And for one, it's pretty much all on Instagram, at least most of it. There's a lot of running and a lot of lifting and some hiking up a Stairmaster in a sweatsuit and then getting into a sauna in the sweatsuit. And that part's the part I don't really enjoy, that I did for the heat training, right? But I mostly do stuff every week that I really like to do. I do some Olympic lifting. I move heavy things. I run quite a bit. I run quite a bit with my dog. I spend a lot of time out on trails. And if we pursue goals that we actually really care about, it tends to lead to training that we want to do, because the goals that we care about tend to lead to pushing us towards the lifestyle we want, right? So if we're struggling to be consistent, sometimes we're just in a slump. Like, that's very real, but it's also probably worth having a chat with yourself about what the goal is and whether the goal actually matters to you right now. It's a lot easier to be consistent when you do things that actually call to you, and when you pursue goals that require weekly training that you actually enjoy. There will be sessions you don't want to do. There will be aspects of training that aren't your favorite. But if you don't really enjoy any of it, and if the end goal doesn't really call to you, then it's not really a surprise, like, why you'd be struggling to do the thing. So, hope you enjoyed my rambling about the Grand Canyon, or at least got something out of it. And if you are struggling to figure out what your training should be or what your next goal should be, I'd love to chat about it with you. I love talking about these things. So reach out, DM me on Instagram, shoot me a text if you happen to have my number, or reply to one of the couple emails I send out every week. I hope you're having a really great day, enjoy your next run, and pursue something that speaks to you.